All right. So yes, thank you so much everyone for tuning in today, and of course to Danny here and Neil Asher Global Campus for not only partnering with me to create some great resources for individuals who work with runners, but of course also inviting me to come and talk to you today about running and to share more with you about how you can be more effective when it comes to the runners that you happen to work with. So let's make sure that my slides want to go. So the big question, that's kind of on our minds is, why are we here today? Why do we need to learn about injury-free running? And the reality is that the knowledge and resources that we get as fitness professionals, healthcare providers, things of that, not enough to work with such a specialized population like runners. And I think that working with runners or just being runners and having runners as part and parcel of the work that we do every day is sometimes something that can start to get taken for granted because of the popularity of running, and the ease of running and the simplicity of running at the surface. A lot of us don't get more knowledge, more education, and more resources on how to specifically help the runners that we encounter in the work that we do. And if we look at some of the numbers specifically around things like injury rates amongst runners, and especially the recurring injury rates that we see amongst runners, then there's a big problem here. I mean, we know that, of course, athletes as a whole, there's a high risk of getting injured if you're an athlete as a whole. But when it comes to looking at runners specifically, I mean, you're looking at a sport with an injury rate, and some studies are showing us 50%. And when we look at the injury rates amongst recurring, so runners who are getting recurring injuries, the same injuries multiple times over and over again, that can be anywhere from 20 up to 70%. So if you're sitting here today, you're watching this live, or you're checking out the replay for this webinar, just know that it's not you, and you're not alone when it maybe comes to feeling a lack of confidence, or maybe like you have a lack of skill in the area of helping either yourself as a runner or the clients that you work with who happen to be runners. And we can start to look a little bit deeper and see that there's even more going on here. There's even more to this story, in that healthcare providers like all of us here today rarely receive running specific training. We go through our education, we do maybe some continuing education, whatever that might look like in the profession that you're in. But, to even get some sport specific advice is a bit rare. And of course, if we want to kind of hone in even more on running, then it's even more difficult. And you pair that up with the fact that distance running, long distance running, has become so much more popular in the last few decades. And especially when we get into things like ultra running, trail running, and these adventure races that are taking runners further, it's taking them farther. It's taking them to more extreme, different terrains, just places that a few decades ago, there just wasn't a huge community of people doing this. But now your, what we can call recreational or sort of everyday type of runner could very well be signing up for a 50 or a 100K race that is coming up next weekend or something like that. And that's just considered kind of normal these days. That's as much as it is an extreme sport by kind of any measure, it's not really viewed that way within the running community anymore. The other big issue is that injury prevention really requires a multifaceted approach. And what I mean by that is that, unfortunately, we can't just look at one thing, like changing somebody's shoes, or taking an extra rest day here and there. Oftentimes injury prevention comes down to having multiple factors and multiple things that person has to change or do differently in order to have the most effective plan possible. Now, when it comes to, getting the support that you need as a healthcare provider, as someone who probably is going to work with runners at some point, even if you don't exclusively work with runners or specialize in working with runners. Chances are in the work that you do as a healthcare or a fitness professional, you're going to come across runners in your practice or in your business. And so what we really need to have is resources that help us learn in a way that we can immediately use. So strategies and techniques and tactics that we can take, we can understand, and we can apply to the next person who's walking in our door. We also need to have this really deep understanding of what makes running different from other sports. Why do we see such high injury rates amongst runners? And why do runners have these incredibly high rates of recurring injuries? Part of the reason, like I mentioned, is the popularity and the rise of more distance, more extreme terrains, places that people are running and doing things that are no longer considered just for elite athletes or sort of this small 1% of runners. When it comes to running, there's really no upper limit to how much volume or intensity somebody might integrate into their training plan. If you look at the flip side, where somebody is maybe playing a team sport, regardless of the level of that athlete, regardless of how much training somebody might do outside of that sport, the games, the practices, the tournaments, whatever that might be, there's a time limit, and there's sort of this natural upper ceiling to the volume and the intensity of the training and the competition that somebody might do. But when we look at running as a sport, and you can think about this with other endurance sports as well, but of course today our focus is going to be running. We think about the distances. Somebody picks up running, and it's maybe they start out running a 5K, and then it's a 10K. And then they're like, well, maybe I'll do a half marathon, and then a full marathon, and then a 50K, and then a 100K, and then a 100-mile. And then, and it could just build and build and grow. There's no cap on how much time, how much distance, how much volume somebody can put into their training as a runner. There's always more that people can be diving into. And of course, the other thing is that, there is this natural simplicity that we see with running. There's sort of this, assumption, I think, amongst a lot of people that because everybody technically can run, it's something that we all learn to do as very young children, that it should be something that everyone can just pick up as an adult, maybe for the first time. And it shouldn't require a lot of professional help or guidance. You just run, you don't even have to wear shoes if you don't want to. There's sort of this assumption that running is very easy and it's something that everybody just innately can do properly. But we know that if we look at injury rates and what happens to runners who don't kind of incorporate proper training and recovery strategies, is that is not the case. So as a professional, one of the most important things that I want you to be thinking about and understanding going forward from today is really getting to know what makes running different from other sports, and why is running maybe not as simple or as easy as sometimes it's made out to be. And then the third thing that we really need are skills. We need to actually have the skills to be able to better help and support our running clients. And this is going further, going deeper than just, telling an injured runner, well, I guess you need to take time off, or I guess, well, running isn't for you, or saying things like, well, running is bad for your knees, and all of this stuff that we now know is completely not the case. But to really be able to help support and encourage runners to stick with the sport that they love, but in a way that is going to be safe and effective for them. So I want to back up a little bit. I want to take you back a few years to when this was me, and these struggles around wanting to help runners, wanting to work with active populations, but feeling like I didn't necessarily have the skills to do that and didn't have the confidence in working with runners was a huge problem for me too. And as much as I enjoyed connecting with runners. And I would always get so excited when I had somebody who was a runner, reach out to me to want to work with me. And it was so wonderful to start to get that recognition as somebody who runners could rely on. I didn't feel like I had all of the skills and all of the knowledge and all of the information that I needed to be able to do it effectively. And most importantly, I just didn't know what I didn't know. So I was working as a dietitian and a personal trainer, and these are two areas of health and fitness. I'm sure a lot of you here today can relate. This is an area of, areas of health and fitness that we don't get specialization in working with populations like runners. We get a little bit of sport nutrition information if you seek it out, and maybe you'll spend some time getting some exposure to working with runners, but it's all very, basic. It's all very kind of beginner intro level. And so what we need is, like I said, the resources, the understanding, and the skills. So now, fast forward 10 plus years, and I know that I'm starting to date myself by saying that, but it's been over 10 years now. And, what we're here to do today is to give you a little bit more knowledge and experience so that you can understand what it is that you need to know to get really great results for your running clients, to get them preventing injuries. If they do happen to be injured, how can we get them back to running as safely as possible? Yes, as quickly as possible, but also as safely as possible. And, helping them feel good and strong along the way, rather than maybe just being told again and again and again that they should just quit running and that is bad for their knees, and, nobody can run forever and maybe you should just walk and stuff like that. It can be really hard for them to hear. And how we do this is I want you to have the ability to take a multifaceted approach to helping runners prevent recurring injuries. So to be able to look at that person very holistically and to be able to ask the right questions, assess the right things, of course, know when to maybe refer out and connect with your colleagues in other fields to help this person get the best possible care. I'm not expecting that you're going to know everything about all the things and be able to treat all of these problems on your own, but to be able to take that, really the zoomed out view of that individual and know what it is they might need to keep moving forward. And then, of course, the other thing that we want to make sure that you have are the actual tools that you'll use in the real world to be able to most effectively support your clients and get them great results. So I want to just take a really quick pause. And for those of you that are here live with us today, I wanted to just take a quick second for you to share in the chat what it is that you're finding is your biggest challenge right now when you're working with running clients. Either, if you're seeing a lot of runners, what's your biggest challenge, or maybe what's stopping you from feeling like you're able to work with runners. So just if everyone wants to just take a quick second in the chat box there to just type in, what do you feel like your biggest challenge is at this point in time? I'll just give everybody a second to find the chat box and go ahead and type it in. Can we all find the chat box? It's just down in the bottom. It's in the bottom corner of my screen. Hopefully it's in the bottom corner of your screen as well, and you can track it down. All right. So Heather says, I work with a vast number of already injured runners and looking to gain information that may further help my treatments. And we have from Rahul, keeping injury free during long ultra running events where runners get injured. Yep, absolutely. So the more distance, the more volume, the more intensity, obviously we see an increase in getting injured, and especially for ultra runners who are doing so much training. Finding that balance, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, is finding that balance of all the pieces that need to connect to prevent injuries, but then of course also help support runners, with their return to sport. So for some people, there can be a little bit of overwhelm with everything we need to know. And when I start to talk about this multifaceted approach, and as you'll see, I'm going to break that down as we go on with exactly what I mean by a multifaceted approach. Feeling overwhelmed by everything and all the different aspects of things we need to know. And then even within the sport of running, what separates a really fast 5K runner from an ultra distance runner, from a trail runner, from a triathlete. And there's just so many different athletes within the world of endurance sports and running. The other big thing is sometimes we feel like we're missing key pieces of information that we just can't seem to find. Or we start to get confused by all of the conflicting information we find online about running. And this is not a unique problem to running or sort of the world of running. Certainly when it comes to all things health, fitness, nutrition, etc., we do see that there's so much conflicting information, a lot of different opinions about how we should approach things, what we should do, that of course our clients are confused, right? That's the reason they're coming to us for help, is because they're feeling confused. But then even as professionals, sometimes we can start to get a little bit bogged down in what is the right answer for this person that's sitting in front of me. So then the question becomes, how can you as a healthcare provider get the confidence and skills you need to better serve your clients? Like what are the pieces that need to come together? What are the specific things that we want to look at so that you can deliver those better services, those better treatments? And so here's exactly what you need. So next we're going to get into our roadmap. So what are the things that we need as healthcare practitioners to be able to better treat and help our running clients? So the first thing is knowing the fundamentals of running and injury prevention. So we have to have that knowledge, and we have to have, that basic foundation of knowing about what causes running injuries, what puts people at risk for running injuries. And then, of course, being able to create and communicate a plan for your clients that's going to be safe and effective. So we have to have the knowledge, we have to have the understanding. We have to be able to take that bird's eye view of the client to see all the different multiple factors that might be contributing to this person's injury risk. And then, of course, we want to be able to create a really cohesive plan that helps this person get where they need to go. So what exactly does that look like? What we see in terms of where we're maybe going wrong, where we're getting lost, can be that we're sometimes focusing on the wrong things. So sometimes it may be the case that we just, because of not having the information, not necessarily having the knowledge, we are focusing and really zeroing in on the wrong parts of what is contributing to that runner's injury risk. We may find that we're actually encouraging our clients to do too much or too little. So the issue is that, either we are telling our clients that if they're getting hurt, they need to stop running, take all this time off, you can't run, you have to go down to 0 in terms of mileage, or maybe we are, kind of still encouraging or allowing our clients to maybe do too much volume, whether it's running or cross training, for the injury that they currently have. And then this is kind of the big one when I talk about that multifaceted approach, is perhaps we're not addressing other factors like sleep, nutrition, or stress that are going to be huge when it comes to, recovering from injuries and preventing injuries going forward. And I really can't stress that enough, that it's not just about the physical part of running, whether that's, mechanics and physiotherapy or massage therapy or some of those, kind of techniques and strategies that so many of you are familiar with. But like I said, we need to really zoom out, take that bird's eye view, and address these other factors that are going to come into play. So what are the 3 steps? What are the 3 things that we need to do? Here we go. So 3 steps that are always going to work, that are always going to give us the result that we're looking for, are going to be to address that client's training, that client's fueling, and that client's recovery. So these are the three things that we want to be thinking about, and these are the three aspects of a injury prevention program, a successful injury prevention program that is going to get your clients doing better, feeling better, being able to train at their full capacity, and recover and prevent injuries going forward. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to do a deeper dive on each of these. We're going to talk in a little bit more detail about each of these three topics. So when it comes to training, what does training look at? So your training, the training part of this is going to be everything from assessing that client's running form, looking at their body mechanics, looking at their anatomy, how that can be playing a role in their injury, in the formation of injuries, or maybe why they're getting a recurring injury. Looking at their gear, maybe it does have something to do with the shoes that they're wearing. Maybe it does have something to do with the pack that they're trying to carry that's too heavy, and maybe they've got it, the weight is misdistributed. Maybe it has to do with the amount of training, the volume, the intensity, and then of course the client's personal experience and goals. So there's a whole checklist of things here that we want to be looking at. We want to be taking into consideration when it comes to how we view that client's training status, what's happening with their training. So some of these are things that we are able to modify. Some of these things we can change and we can, fix. But other things like their anatomy, for example, are things that we can't necessarily influence. Some anatomical differences between runners are things that we might just need to learn how to work around. And we may need to help that client learn to work around, either with modifications to running form and mechanics. Maybe it's going to be modifications to gear, choosing a specific pair of shoes, for example, that work better for that person. Maybe it's additional strength training in a certain area because they're going to naturally have a tendency to do this or that with their running form. And then, of course, very modifiable factors are going to be their volume and their intensity. So looking at how much training are they doing, what kind of training are they doing, where are they getting in their rest days, how many kind of easy runs per week are these clients getting in versus doing harder training sessions, and be able to modify some of those things to give them a more effective plan. So the things that I want you to be considering, kind of the things that we want to keep on our list when we're looking at training are going to be that individual's form, mechanics, and anatomy, right? So the physical side of their running, what's happening with their bodies when they're running, what's happening with their bodies all the time if we're talking about anatomy. And this can be done, one of the tools that we teach with the programs that we've developed here would be doing a gait analysis. So setting up a gait analysis to look at that client's running form, looking at their mechanics, and then of course being able to do some assessments of their anatomy to see where we need to make considerations when it comes to their training. And then of course the second really important piece is going to be that runner's gear. So how are they doing in terms of the gear that they're choosing? If you signed on a couple minutes before we actually hit record here, then you would have heard myself and Danny talking about his running shoe journey that he's been on for a while, trying out some different shoes and, looking at maybe a more minimalist shoe versus something that has a little bit more support and stability. And of course, every runner being completely different when it comes to form and mechanics and volume and all of that stuff, there is no one size fits all when it comes to running shoes. And anybody who sort of promotes or is really insistent that everybody should be wearing this one specific type of shoe, or that this other specific type of shoe is always bad and nobody should wear it, and just sort of the controversy that we see around some of these choices with our running gear really aren't true. They aren't legit, and they definitely aren't going to be relevant for a lot of the clients we work with. So it's not just a matter of saying, well, these are the good shoes and these are the bad shoes, and it's that simple, but it needs to be the right gear, the right shoe for the right client, for the right volume of training, and for the right goal that that person might have. Also keeping in mind that as somebody goes from maybe rehabbing an injury to injury prevention, to being sort of beyond that phase and being a much stronger, healthier, more balanced runner, their shoe needs might change. And that's great. We want to have flexibility, and we want to be able to, you know, choose something different as it kind of works for us. So part of the skills that we need as practitioners that are working with runners is being able to give some general recommendations around shoes without it coming back to our own maybe personal bias and what works well for us. And the next thing we really need to look at is the volume and the intensity of the training that client is doing. So, like I said, depending on their goals, their experience, what they're working towards or trying to achieve, we need to be really tuned in to how much running do they need to do in order to get those results? How much intensity do we need to build into the program to see the results they want to see? And at what point are we maybe doing too much just for the sake of doing too much? If you currently work with runners or you are a runner, one thing that you probably know very, very well is that there can be a bit of a personality type around runners, and definitely a bit of a personality type around runners who struggle with injuries. And, we might call that a bit of a type A personality, maybe a bit of a perfectionist personality. Runners tend to be motivated, driven, dedicated, hardworking individuals. And so often our role as healthcare providers and coaches isn't necessarily to push people, but it's actually to scale them back a little bit, to kind of hold them back from doing things that are maybe going to be unsafe or ineffective for them. So if you work with runners, maybe this is your experience, but certainly with me, a lot of what I do with some of my clients who are these very sort of high achievers and like to do a lot of distance and a lot of intensity is we're teaching them to do less. We're teaching them to slow down. We're teaching them to have those rest days. We're teaching them to listen to their bodies and not push things, especially pain and those small injuries, pushing them beyond where they should be, and going and running through things that really should not be run through. So there's a lot of technical skills that we need to have and knowledge that we need to have, but also so much of what we do is going to be about sharing wisdom with runners of knowing where to find that balance. And so where you're going to find your answers when it comes to the training side of things, of course, we're going to spend lots of time talking to our clients. We're going to be doing those consultations, and we're going to be getting tons of information from them about their health history, about their goals, about what they've been doing with their training, all of that great stuff. But then we also really want to have those physical assessment skills, whether that's through a gait analysis, whether that's through other types of physical assessments that we're able to do in our practices, to be able to get more information about where they're at with their anatomy and their running mechanics. Then when it comes to the education side, it's having those resources to be able to then create and communicate that effective plan. And so when it comes to developing a training strategy that is, meant for injury prevention and having that effective training plan that's going to help this runner stay injury free, it's about confidently providing feedback that is effective and safe. So when we're seeing something, through a physical assessment, through a gait analysis that, doesn't look quite right, something we maybe think is going to be problematic, being able to really provide that feedback and help that person get on the right path. We also want to have the knowledge and the skills to be able to suggest specific strength training exercises that are going to improve that runner's form and mechanics. So having that sort of library in our back pocket and having that list of exercises that can help strengthen and improve the specific areas that we need to work on for that individual. What you'll find, if you are a bit new to working with runners and you, are starting to look into more of these educational resources and starting to understand more about running as a whole, there is a lot of overlap. I think, given the nature of our society, the sedentariness with which we all spend a lot of our days here at our computers and stuff like that, there's a lot of overlap and a lot of commonalities in terms of the strength training exercises and the weak areas that a lot of runners tend to share. So we want to have, that knowledge that Generally speaking, here's some exercises that are going to be effective and helpful for most people, but we also want to have the ability to go deeper and to do those analyses on an individual basis to see if there's anything else that we can be doing differently. The third thing we need to be able to do, this is, of course, the very important, if not maybe the most important part of this whole process, is helping clients add volume and intensity to their training without injury. So as we sort of up the ante on a training program, as our clients, or maybe ourselves, if you're listening here today as a runner personally, helping our clients add that volume and intensity in a safe and effective way without re-triggering injuries or kind of getting them into that injury space is probably the most important thing that we can provide guidance on and how we can really help people. So we're going to switch gears next, and we're going to talk a little bit about fueling. So why focus on fueling? Like, why nutrition? We know that a runner's gait, their shoes, their anatomy, their training volume and intensity, we know that all of those factors are very much predictive of injury risk in runners. And there's a lot there that we can unpack and uncover that's going to tell us more about why a runner gets injured. However, something that is often overlooked is the nutrition side of things. And this is why I've mentioned a couple times here today that we need a multifaceted approach to injury prevention and injury rehabilitation. And this is because nutrition plays a very key role that a lot of people really, really aren't aware of. So some of the things that we need to consider when it comes to fueling, the first is something called energy availability. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with this term, energy availability is how many calories is that runner taking in? How many calories does that runner need to support basic body functions? So just their resting metabolism, their sort of background energy needs. Sometimes we'll call it just keeping the lights on inside, but their basal resting metabolism. How many calories do they need to support that? Which surprised a lot of people is actually the majority of most of our daily calories goes into just keeping everything working properly in our bodies. And then how much do they need to support their training, right? And we want to think about this. How much do they need for their resting metabolism and keeping their body functioning properly? That's everything from keeping their brain functioning, their heart beating, their enzymes and their neurotransmitters and their hormones and their digestive system, like all of this stuff working properly. And then how many extra calories do they need for their training demands? And if we don't have enough to go around for all of these things, if there aren't enough calories for both our resting metabolism and how much we need for our training, we have low energy availability. That is a huge problem. And runners and other endurance athletes are at a particularly high risk of low energy availability because of the high volumes and intensity of training that they tend to do. So we really need to be looking at, do I suspect that this runner that's coming in that is complaining about always being injured, their mechanics look good, their anatomy's pretty good, I think they're wearing the right shoes, everything seems fine, but what else is maybe going on here? What else can I help this person with? We need to be considering their fueling and their energy availability. The other important aspect, kind of the step 2 to that, is going to be their meal timing. And the reason that this is so important is because, not only is it about getting in enough calories over the course of the day as a whole, but are we getting in the nutrients at the right time to support our training demands? This might look like meal timing around a long run. Is that runner eating enough before, during, and after that training session to optimize their performance, to optimize their running mechanics, the energy they have available during that run? And are they, of course, getting in that recovery meal that they need afterwards to start supporting the recovery processes in the body? We also then have something called macronutrient distribution. So our macronutrients are our carbohydrates, our fats, and our proteins. This is where we get calories from in our diet. And so we have to look too at what percentage or what proportion of carbs, fats, and proteins are we getting in the diet? Are we getting the right mix, the right blend, the right distribution of these macronutrients to support optimal health as well as optimal training and performance? It's about that balance. It's about getting all of the right things in the right proportions to support that runner's needs. And then, of course, if we're looking specifically at injury prevention and recovery and other aspects of performance too, we can start to talk more about micronutrients. And micronutrients are our vitamins and minerals. And while the macronutrients, right, the carbs, the fats, fuel our activity, protein fuels our recovery, micronutrients play such an important role in helping our bodies heal and recover and repair to get ready for our next training session. So it's not just about, is this person eating enough calories? It's, are they eating the calories at the right time of day? Are they eating the right types of calories? And are they eating the right high quality foods that are giving them the micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals that they really need to optimize their recovery as well as support that basic performance needs? So there's a whole bunch of things that we want to be considering here. Now, I don't expect that, for anybody who's on listening to the webinar live or maybe checking out the recording, I don't expect all of you to be experts in nutrition. That's fine if you're not, if this feels a little bit intimidating. But I think for all healthcare providers, whether you specialize in nutrition or not, I think there's a really important opportunity for clients to hear about the importance of nutrition from many different people they encounter in their lives. So even if you aren't someone who does a lot of counseling or a lot of work around nutrition, I think it's still so helpful for, you as a healthcare provider in maybe a different field to be able to say to that person who you already have that therapeutic relationship with, to say, hey, you know what? We've done a lot of great work together. We've done everything that we kind of can, looking at your running form. We've looked at your gait. We've been fixing your shoes, but you're still struggling. I wonder if maybe there's something with your nutrition that we need to look at more closely. And even just opening the door to that conversation, getting them thinking and maybe talking about food in that little way is so impactful and valuable in the long run, versus feeling like, this isn't my area of expertise, or this isn't something I feel confident or comfortable with, so I'm just not going to even touch on it or bring it up. Opening that door to that conversation, getting the client thinking about other parts of their injury prevention strategy is really helpful. We do, of course, have some information at the end of this session about how you can learn more about nutrition and getting those fundamentals down. But I don't want you to feel like, you have to be an expert in all of the things in order to be able to be really effective and impactful with your clients. So where can we look to find more information about fueling? Like I said already, we're talking to our clients. Just like with training, it comes down to that client consultation, having lots of conversations, asking lots of questions. And then we can also look at specifically their performance and maybe body composition data. So how is this person doing with their energy levels? How are they doing with their sleep? How are they doing with their training? We can look at some of these metrics to tell if perhaps there's an energy availability or a fueling problem at play. And then, of course, I want you to have the educational resources you need as well, to have the skills to ask the right questions, to know what to do next and how to best help your clients. So what we want to do in practice is we want to be screening clients for issues like low energy availability. And this is really going to be just coming down to asking some questions, maybe getting them to think about and write down what they eat in a day, or tell you kind of generally what they eat in a day. We definitely know that, screening can be also done based on things like body composition analysis. That's not always going to be the most effective, depending on the clientele that you work with, performance issues and stuff like that. We also want to help clients understand the importance of nutrition for their running success. And this is going to be, like I said, just hearing this information from multiple sources, multiple people, and having someone there that can, really sort of plant the seed and thinking about this as an important aspect of their training. And then as well, we also want to keep in mind our unique scope of practice. And like I said, I don't want anyone to feel like they're maybe needing to become an expert on something that they don't want to be, or give advice that they don't feel comfortable giving. But of course, referring to your colleagues who work in nutrition and just having those networks available is so helpful for everybody. So then finally, where does recovery fit into all of this? So we've talked about training, we've talked about fueling, and how does recovery become the last piece of that puzzle? And I'll be honest, I feel bad for recovery because recovery is so often overlooked. And I think a lot of times runners will get encouragement from the running community for not really focusing as much on rest and recovery, because recovery includes nutrition, rest, sleep, and stress management in other areas of our lives. But we live in this culture that prioritizes being busy and prioritizes not getting and not needing as much sleep, getting in 3, 4, 5 hours and then getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go for a run, tackling bigger volumes and distances, not taking days off, doing things like run streaking. That gets a lot of attention and a lot of support in a lot of social media spaces. And so recovery is sort of a bit overlooked, I think, in a lot of circles. And this is the thing that so many runners are missing from that cohesive strategy. They're working with healthcare professionals, are working with providers on manual therapies. They're getting their physio, they're doing their exercises, they are looking at their form, they've changed their shoes, like they're doing all of that stuff, but they've completely forgotten about this whole part of the puzzle, this whole piece of the bigger picture. So for you as somebody who's working with runners, having that focus on proper recovery, nutrition, rest, sleep, and stress management, I think can be tremendously impactful and valuable in how these runners go forward and actually stay injury-free in the long run. So what we need here is we really want to make sure that our runners have a plan and a strategy around sleep, around rest, not just a rest day here and there, but like downtime, active activities and things that help to relieve stress that are not exercise. Because like I mentioned before, runners, can be a little bit quirky in the sense that we love to run, we love to do lots of exercise. And so many runners, their only outlet for stress is exercise. They have nothing else in their lives that is going to help them when it comes to relieve their stress. So when they're injured or they can't run as much, they really struggle and they're racing to get back to exercise and activity before it's really safe. So we want our runners to have, enough rest and recovery time built into their plan, but also have these strategies for stress management that don't just come back to having more physical activity and more exercise in their lives. Yes, there's a time and place for cross training, but if we're, doing way too much volume or intensity of cross training when we really need to be resting, then that is going to be a huge problem that we have to help that runner overcome. And then, of course, finally, recovery nutrition. And this goes back to, energy availability, having enough vitamins and minerals in the diet, having the right mix of macronutrients. So recovery nutrition isn't different than our fueling strategy as a whole. It's all kind of part of the same conversation and all kind of part and parcel, but I don't want recovery nutrition to be sort of forgotten about or an afterthought in the context of the greater recovery plan here. So these are the things that we really need our runners to have. And this is, again, part of that multifaceted approach to injury prevention that's going to keep the runners we work with healthier for longer. So what it looks like is, of course, helping our clients prioritize sleep and rest and really helping them see where they're maybe getting encouragement to do the wrong things from maybe some of the online community spaces out there. Helping them understand recovery nutrition strategy, so helping them to see and to get what they need to fuel their bodies properly for recovery. And then, of course, when we are returning to training or we are going to be going back to running or increasing our volume and intensity, is helping them understand how to do this in a gradual way and to really be able to implement a safe and gradual increase in the volume and intensity that we're seeing. So there we have it, our 3 steps to an injury prevention strategy that we can use for our runners. We went through training, we went through fueling, we went through recovery. And what we've done today is kind of given you a framework and some specific structure and some things to think about that you can implement with your clients going forward. So all that is kind of a lot, and I hope that I was able to give you some things to think about, some places to go to get more information, and really a way to kind of think differently about how you work with runners, and then of course how to get your runners also thinking differently about how they approach their training, how they think about nutrition and fueling, and of course how they think about their recovery as a part of this effective injury prevention, injury management plan. So what comes next? What's the next step here? I've sort of mentioned a couple of times, I've sort of very briefly spoken here about needing to get the education and resources and skills that you need to feel confident in working with runners. And I can't really stress the importance of that enough. I know that that was critical for me in my journey, becoming who I am today, Steph, the runner's dietitian and running coach, who's able to do all of this very readily and to be able to do this in an effective way. And I really want to help you do the same, to kind of get the skills, get the knowledge so that you feel confident in making these plans and having these conversations and discussions with your clients. So where we're going to finish up today before we get to our Q&A period is I want to just give you a little bit of information about the 2 courses that I was so thrilled and I guess I should say excited to create with Neil Asher Global Campus. So where you can begin your educational journey and kind of where to go from here to continue to dive into all of this information and get more information on these topics. We've actually got 2 really great resources that we created for you earlier this year. The first is a course called Injury Free Running. So exactly like the name of this course, and it's also the name of the workbook that's a really great book that goes along with this course, Injury Free Running. And then we also have a course called Foundations in Sport Nutrition. So like I said, I don't need you to be an expert on nutrition for runners. And if you don't want to be an expert in nutrition for runners, that is okay. But if you want to get more information and more education on the topic, then this is a great place to get started and get more details about some of the things that we've talked about today. So first, for injury-free running, the process that you'll get taken through is to look at all of the different things that we talked about today. So, of course, running form and mechanics being a huge part of figuring out how to help people run injury-free, looking at the anatomy of runners and how there are different anatomical differences that can really increase the risk of this injury or that injury for different people. Being able to take a closer look at running gear, questions around things like shoes and helping clients understand what shoes might work best for them. We, of course, also have to touch on nutrition and rest and recovery and having some education around training volume and intensity as well. So just putting all of these pieces together to help you be more effective and more impactful with the running plans that you make, the consultation to do with your clients, so that you can help them not only rehab and recover from injuries, but also prevent them going forward. And so what's included with injury-free running is lifetime access to course materials. We've gone and recorded, it's almost a full 2 hours of video content, and almost just like here I am talking to you, it's me explaining some of these topics and giving some advice and, a little bit of my own experience along the way. And of course, you get this really fantastic injury-free running book along with it, which I can't recommend enough as a great resource to go along with this course. Then we have Foundations in Sport Nutrition. And the process here is to take you through being able to create a personalized nutrition strategy for the clientele that you serve. So everything from looking at things like energy availability, macronutrients, understanding carbs, fat, and protein, what they do and where they come from, understanding vitamins and minerals, the importance of key vitamins and minerals for exercise recovery and performance, being able to do a deeper dive on meal timing and nutrition timing for your runners. Of course, we touch on supplements and where supplements might fit into a running nutrition plan, and then working with, special populations or whether it's endurance, ultra endurance athletes, longer distance athletes. And we have some other ones in there as well that are really great to have a bit of a better understanding about the types of people that you might encounter in the work that you do. So this is our Foundations in Sport Nutrition course. Again, you also here get lifetime access to the course materials. We have over 2 hours of video content for this course. And with it, you also get this book too, to go along with the information that you'll find in the videos. So really helpful for anybody who is looking to get a better understanding of foundations of sport nutrition for any of the different athletes that you might work with. But then, of course, there is some running specific content within that. With injury-free running, we're talking all about runners and really focusing on them as a special population. So when it comes to what your clients need to help stay injury-free, we need a couple of things. Safe and effective training strategies. We have to make sure that these clients are following an appropriate plan that is going to get them the results they're looking for, get them further along in their running journey, but are safe and effective. We want them to have a personalized nutrition plan, really understand their unique nutrition needs and what that looks like. We need them to have adequate rest and recovery. And we want them to be able to get running specific advice from the people that they're working with. So working with professionals who understand runners, who understand running, and who are able to really tailor the recommendations and the advice we give to them as a unique individual. So will this work for you? If you're a professional, if you're a runner, will these strategies that I've shared today get you where you want to go and either help prevent injuries, help you achieve your big running goals that you might have? And the reality is that runners are unique and need providers with the right skills and knowledge. Like I mentioned, runners have personality traits sometimes that can be very important for us to be able to navigate and can sometimes hold them back from being able to do the smart things because of their drive and their dedication and their motivation. But they need providers who are able to help them navigate those challenges, keep them on the straight and narrow. Having the right education and the right tools can make a huge difference, not only for you as a runner, if you're joining us today listening as a runner, but also as someone who works with runners. It makes such a difference in terms of your education and your confidence to have what you need. And helping your clients on the path to injury-free running with the right strategies. And that's what we want for you going forward, is to take these tips, these tools, and these frameworks that I've provided to you today, and to be able to start to put them into use. But of course, if you need more information, if you want to go deeper and learn more about these topics, then you can do that. We've got just QR codes here. You can just, with your phone, you can just scan the QR code on either one of these, and it'll take you right to that course page where you can get more information and more details. So that is everything that I wanted to share today. I want to thank you so much for joining me. And I see we do have a couple questions that have come in throughout the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and start our Q&A period here. And if there are any other questions that anyone's thought of along the way, please feel free to just type it in the chat, or if you're signed on, you can just unmute yourself and chime in and ask live.